all the cards for the starter decks have finally been revealed, which means we can finally playtest the first wave of Overdress.
Stand up! Vanguard!
Hey Cardfighters, welcome back to another Cardfight update, and today we go over the final reveals for the first starter decks for the Overdress era. And I don't mean necessarily the first 3 starter decks, as Japan gets them in 2 separate waves. I actually mean that after this video, we know all the important cards of all the starter decks, and we can actually play any one of the 5 starter decks for their nation and play test what Overdress feels like and how they are intended to play out. So without any further ado, let's jump straight into these cards, because I have 6 new cards to talk about, and they are actually pretty interesting, or at the very least some of them are actually pretty interesting. So first off, we're gonna start off with Dark States, because we already know all the cards for Dragon Empire, so I don't have any new reveals for Dragon Empire in this video. So for Dark States, we have a brand new Grade 2 that is a Gear Chronicle unit that is Steam Gunner Brody. And Brody has the ability, although when this unit is put on Guardian Circle, cost counter +1, and this unit gets shield +5k until the end of that battle. So it's effectively a 10k shield unit. And one important thing to note of here is that with the wording of this skill, with when this unit is put on Guardian Circle, it basically implies that you are able to intercept with it and still activate the skill. And interesting enough, the new Grade 1 PGs in the starter deck, as well as this new type of Sentinel that we're going to get in the main set, have the same wording as put on Guardian Circle. And with the current rulings in the comprehensive rules, this means that intercepting will activate these abilities. However, I want to give one important information here, is that yes, it might work right now, it doesn't mean once Overdress actually rolls around that this still will work the same way, as Bushiroad can easily change the ruling referring to the way how this skill is worded. Because keep in mind, they are completely rewriting the way how they normally write skills, which might mean that they might change the rules how we are supposed to interpret these skills. So for now, we can assume that it will activate when intercepting, but that might change once we're entering the actual Overdress era. So what does this actually mean for this card? For me, this is actually a pretty decent effect, because this means we have a 10k shield unit and we are lacking the qualities or the quantities to actually actively guard against our opponents, as most of our shield went down. So having a skill like this actually can be way more impactful than you might think. And even though this would typically be disregarded as a bad card in V era and even in the early stages of V, currently it looks to be that this is actually a really playable card right out of the starter deck, and potentially even in the first couple of waves from the main booster set, because having access to extra shield is way more impactful than you think. And with the fact that the deck doesn't really use Counterblast all that much, you can easily pay for the resources. And interesting enough, apparently only the Gear Chronicle units within the starter deck uses Counterblast, as the Grade 3 also uses Counterblast, which is kind of interesting that they went with that route. But hey, for what it is, a 10k shield, which could potentially also be used as an interceptor, is actually pretty pog in my book. Now, if we go to Cater Sanctuary, their final new card that has been revealed is their order card, which is the Hour of Holy Judgment Cometh. And this order has the ability, play this with cost, Counterblast 2, draw 2 cards, choose one of your units, and it gets power +5k until the end of turn. This is actually really good for the deck, because the deck doesn't really use any Counterblast, and with the fact that you have so many Grade 3s, you need to draw in multiple cards to at least have either cards to call on the field, or more importantly, have cards in your hand to guard yourself with. And the extra 5k is basically an extra icing on top to make this order card more worth it, as it's effectively 2 Counterblast and a discard for 2 draws, which isn't all that great, so the extra 5k is somewhat of an extra added bonus on top of it. So for now it's a fine order card, but probably will get replaced with better cards in the future if they do not have other Grade 3s to replace it. Because keep in mind, this is a Grade 3 that still interact with your main gimmick of the deck, as it can either be revealed from your hand or it can be Drove Check, which allows you to reset a unit. So it has inherent synergies just with the fact that it's a Grade 3. Now if we go over to Stoicheia, we've got 2 new cards for Stoicheia, and first off we have a Grade 2 2 unit, which is Looting Pedal Stomalia. And Stomalia has the ability act on rearguard circle once a turn, cost counter +1 and soul +1, and this unit gets boost and power +5k until the end of turn. So this is effectively a 15k attacker or booster, and overall this isn't all that great, but the fact that it can be seen as a booster is actually pretty nice because Stoicheia wants to have a full field with their whole mechanic, and having the ability to actually allows its grade 2 to be put in the back row is also pretty good because they run a surplus of grade 2s because they have this whole back row attack gimmick. But at the same time, as I explained when we went over the main support lineup, you might sometimes want to boost an entire column with power so you can overcome defensive triggers or whatnot, and having a grade 2 that can also boost and increase that number of the column can actually be really beneficial because it means you have multiple options to go with your attack pattern. The only issue that I have with this card is that it is yet another card that costs soul, and almost every card in this deck uses soul to some extent, and they have no way to replenish that soul. Yes, it also costs a counterblast, but honestly, if this was just counterblast 1, this would actually be a pretty decent card for the deck. But because it's counterblast 1, soul blast 1, it's almost unplayable by the sheer fact that everything costs soul. So kind of annoying if I'm gonna be very honest. Now for the second Stoicheia card, and this is actually a very surprising one. We've got their order card, but this isn't a normal order card. This is actually the very first Blitz order card that we've seen. And I don't mean seen in Overdress. I mean this is the official very first Blitz order that we have seen ever in Vanguard. Yes, the shield ticket is a Blitz order per se, but it's actually not really a Blitz order. It's a Blitz order ticket, which is a pseudo Blitz order. This is the official first Blitz order, which is Call to the Beast. And Call to the Beast has a very simple skill, which is choose one of your units and it gets power +5k until the end of that battle. If you have 3 or more back row rear guards, it gets power +15k instead of +5. Now, keep in mind, Blitz orders can only be used when you can place guardians onto the guardian circle. So basically during your opponent's turn, this is another way to guard for your opponent's attacks. So now, interesting enough, this synergizes with the whole playstyle of Stoicheia, where you want to flood the board. But if you flood the board, you lose shield value in your hand because every grade 1 or grade 2 that you call is 5k shield that you lose. Now, how this card works, you are basically negating that shield loss, because if you have a full back row, that's 3 units, which is 15k shield, and then this order card becomes 15k extra power on your Vanguard or whatever unit you want to use it on, but you're probably going to use it on your Vanguard, which is actually really interesting. And because it's the grade 2 order card, this can actually be a really good early game guard option if you don't want to ramp up a lot of damage. But also, because this is effectively a 15k shield card in your hand as a Blitz order, it is a 15k shield card that can have some future scaling, because if we get some weird guard restrict that doesn't allow your opponent to guard with sentinels or with grade 1s and higher from hand or whatever, Blitz orders aren't restricted by guard restrictions themselves, because Blitz order cards aren't physically placed onto the field themselves. So this is a very interesting card that might actually come up in the future if we are starting to get more archetypes that will revolve around guard restricting. So don't forget this card, as it might not look all that amazing right now, but it can definitely come up in the future because it's a Blitz order, and we don't really know how Blitz orders actually impact the game as a whole, because we never really saw them. So I'm very curious, I'm very hyped for the future, because this means Blitz orders are actually going to be a thing. Now, from that hype train of actually Blitz orders being officially a thing now, let's go over the last nation and the last starter deck, which is of course the starter deck for Brandgate. And we start off with an interesting grade 1, which is Autonomic Caution. And Autonomic Caution has the ability continuous or rearguard circle and guardian circle. If one or more of your opponent's cards are imprisoned in your prison, this unit gets power +2k and shield +5k. Now, this is actually a pretty decent card because it can immediately become a 10k booster or attacker in the early game, because you can immediately bind something or imprison something on your, I believe, your second turn once you ride the grade 2, which means it is almost live the entire game. Now, it becoming a 10k booster is also very important because it makes our Vanguard column a potential 33 column, which is really good, but it also makes that rearguard grade 3 with the on-hit effect also swing for 23k, which is way better than just 13k or maybe somewhere in the 21 ballpark. So having this as a booster is really nice. But at the same time, it's just like the one for Dark States, it's a 10k shield potentially, which means you can increase your shield value and actually finally have a 10k guard from hand. And this also makes the imprison mechanic also more important, because now your opponent has another thing to worry about if they do not rescue or bail out their units from the prison, because that means you give your opponent Brandgate player extra free shield. So this puts another layer on top of the whole prison mechanic, which is really nice. But now we get to the final card for Brandgate, which is their new grade 2 Security Patroller. And Security Patroller has the ability, although when this unit is placed on the rearguard circle, cost +1, choose one of your opponent's rearguards and imprison it in your prison. This is actually really good. This is a card that they needed because now they have actually consistent access to this imprison mechanic, and it isn't solely behind our Vanguard counterblast or an on-hit from a rearguard. Now they have consistent access to it, and with the inherent soul charge capability of the order itself, it makes a lot of sense where now everything clicks together. And interesting enough, this is probably the most important card in the mirror match of the Brandgate matchup, because the Brandgate player that gets access to this patroller the fastest probably has a much higher win rate against the other, because they can keep reusing it over and over and over again, because the Brandgate player wants to imprison their units. But if they imprison this card, then the other Brandgate player can bail that card out and reuse the ability, because it's just an unplace effect and not unplace from hand. And if you're just gonna rely on the soul charge, you can just keep using the order card to accelerate your soul cut. You can keep using it over and over again and keep imprisoning your opponent's units, and the player that gets access to this one will have an unfair advantage over the other one. It will get in an interesting situation once both players have access to this grade 2, because then it will be a back and forth against each other, but we have to wait and see that actually in practice to see what the outcome is to such a matchup. But overall, I am actually very excited about this card, and also for some reason I can see this resemblance, and I don't know if I'm the only one, but that's a thing. And at the same time, it also makes the artwork of the Imprison Order card, the set order, it makes it a lot more sense now. So yeah, I don't know what direction they went for, but I cannot unsee it anymore at this point. And hopefully, so do you. But that's basically all the new cards that we got for the card of the day in the last couple of weeks. Now, you might think to yourself, now hold up, you said that we got all the cards for the starter deck, we are still missing certain cards, we don't know everything. Well, to answer that question, we basically know every single card of every starter deck. The only cards that we do not know are the triggers, which are just generic triggers with the reminder text. The starter, which we know what the skills are. It's basically when you're going second, you can draw a card, that's it. For some, we don't know the Perfect Guard, but it's just your generic Perfect Guard. That's the only cards that aren't officially revealed. And for Stoicheia and for Brandgate, there is one card, a grade 2 for both of them, that hasn't been revealed whatsoever, but we can 99.99999% sure say with certainty that that's going to be a vanilla card, because all the other nations got a vanilla card. Brandgate, Stoicheia, and Dark States have a grade 2 vanilla, and Dragon Empire and Cater Sanctuary have a grade 1 vanilla. And they're just what you think they are. They have the same base power and shield value as grade 2s or grade 1s with actual skill. So nothing advantageous about those cards themselves. So that basically tells us that we now know what all the cards will do in the starter decks, and we can actually experience and try to play test with these decks and get a better feeling how Overdress is actually being played out, and the potential of how strong certain decks and certain nations are going to be in contrast to the other ones. So this is actually a pretty interesting time to now experiment Vanguard, because we will get in this limbo situation where we now need to wait until Bushiroad actually finish up releasing these cards, because they're probably still going to release the triggers and PGs and vanilla cards as they do per usual. And then we need to wait until we actually start to get into the bulk reveals for the main set. So depending on what direction Bushiroad will take, we can either have a slow week or slow weeks in front of us, or things might suddenly accelerate very fast. because we might dive immediately into the very first main core booster set for Overdress. And as soon as we already saw the whole Alchemagic earlier this week, and we know that we're going to get 2 new decks for next week, I think things start to accelerate very soon. So things are looking to be very exciting in the near future. So with that said, let me know in the comment section down below what you guys think of these new cards for these starter decks, and what are your opinions about these starter decks? Which starter deck are you the most excited for? Which starter deck do you think is the strongest or the most funnest to play? Let me know all your thoughts in the comment section down below. As always, this video has been brought to you by lovely patrons over patreon.com/VanguardInsider. You guys are amazing. If you want to support the channel or everything that's happening on the channel, you can go to patreon.com/VanguardInsider and become a patron today. But with that said, I'm Mr. Time Leap, and I see you guys in the next one!